Okay, so tonight we got a pair of Ryde-Fx Air 2.0 shocks off a Polaris IQ Dragon 600. And basically, these eliminate the need of a spring. So you basically have nitrogen in here and a floating piston inside this part. And then you charge this up with 70 pounds of nitrogen. And then you got basically the same thing down here. You got a floating piston down in this end, and then you got oil in here. So as this shock collapses, the oil shoves the floating piston up in here against the 70 pounds and gives you your spring. And then the shock oil does the dampening just like a standard shock. So we'll tear these apart so you can see what's inside of them. First time we've done these, so it's going to be herky-jerky doing it. We'll have to do it, take them apart 3 times and do it right. But okay, I'm going to take these Ryde-Fx Air 2.0 shocks apart. First, remove the nitrogen from the spring end and then from the oil end of the shock. And then you remove the bleeder or the filler valves, both ends. It's an air shock, so instead of having a spring, it's got an air chamber, and that's the big shiny rod hanging out inside is a chamber that holds nitrogen and acts as a spring. So we're going to disassemble here. Get rid of our junk oil. And then we got to remove the floating piston from the oil half and then from the air half. So he's blown it out of the oil half there. And then I got to disassemble the air half here. Got to remove the shock piston and valve stack from the end of it. And that bolt that holds it on's got a hole through it that lets the oil go up into the air chamber. And then you got this bottom piece, you got to use a 2-pin spanner wrench to remove that. And that unscrews out of there. And then once you have that removed, that allows you to remove the air side floating piston, so to speak, I guess. I don't know what you call it, but that's what we'll call it. You're just going to pop that out. And then you got to clean up all your parts real good. Like anything, dirt is your enemy. And it's good to check them out, make sure there's no scuffs or stuff that'll ruin your seals when you put it back together. Where'd this guy go? You want a break or what? Oh no, he's back now. We basically just use a brake cleaner and compressed air. It usually does a pretty good job. Guy should probably be wearing some surgeon's gloves there to protect his hands from the chemicals, but he's kind of stupid, so he just sprays brake cleaner on his hands instead. So now you put the air chamber together first. He's off getting the O-rings out of the kits. Up, threw them on the ground. Alright. So I don't really know how these go together. So we just put the air IFP in there. Set that in there. And then you put your bottom back on there. It had green Loctite when we took it apart, but it came apart pretty easy, so we just put some red in there instead of the green. And we don't want to heat the thing to get it apart. Sometimes that green you gotta heat. And you don't have to go too nuts with anything, you just tighten stuff up. And he's putting the shock piston and valve stack back on there. I think that stuff gets torqued to like 15 foot-pounds. Okay, so now he's charging that up with nitrogen, and now that'll force that floating piston to the, basically to the top of what you're looking at, which would be the bottom of the air chamber. And as the oil, as it compresses, oil will push up through that hole and push the piston up and compress it against that 70 pounds of nitrogen and create a spring. So here he's going to go put the oil side of the shock, or the conventional side of the shock, back together. Oh, he just realized he didn't put the gland on the rod end there. Oh, I bet he's pissed. Yeah, he's pissed. He's got to go over and discharge that shock. Let that 2 cents of nitrogen out in the air. That's what he's pissed most about. So you gotta let that go and take it back apart. Put it all back together. Maybe if he spent a little more time paying attention to what he's doing instead of trying to make YouTube videos, he wouldn't screw so much shit up. But alright, so we're gonna remove the valve stack, making sure we don't lose any of the valve stack washers, or get those out of place. And then we put the gland on there and put the bottom back on. And don't forget to put your piston on there, attaboy. Alright, now he's starting to calm back down because he's getting back to where he was. Alright, no big deal. Alright, so now we got to get our IFP depth set on the shock side. Get that filled with oil. Now first he's going to put on a new O-ring. There's an O-ring and wear band go on there. Put a little petroleum jelly on there to make her slide in there nice and easy, and O-ring don't catch on nothing. And just slide that down in the hole, 5 3/4 inches. We got that tool already set to that depth, so you push it down until it bottoms out on the top there. And then you put your valve back in, and that'll kind of create a vacuum in there, and that piston should hopefully stay in the same spot as you cycle the shock piston back and forth to work the oil out. Alright, so now I'm just going to fill her up with oil. Working the air out of the valve stack. Well, must be don't like the oil level. Yeah, he's going to add a little more oil. Alright. So kind of the idea is here is you fill that shock within about a 1/2 inch from the top, and as you slide it together, kind of got to make sure your piston doesn't have any air in there. Work that through. So that's what he's doing there now. And once you think you got your out of that, you just kind of put it together. And as it goes together, it kind of displaces oil out of there and pushes the air out, hopefully. And you kind of watch as long as it's going together and it's pushing oil out the whole time you're putting it together, you're kind of in good shape. I think that's what he's slowing down for. I don't know what he's doing there. Alright, and you just snug that gland up. Don't have to go too crazy. And then that shock's done. Other than putting a charge of nitrogen behind the IFP on the shock side of that shock. Now the oil side, the book says 170, we put 200 in that. And on the air side we put 70. The recommendations were like 70 and 170, but we're doing a lot of reading on these, checking up on them, and most guys are running 200 pounds on the oil side, which is what a normal Fox shock would run. So that's why we jumped that up a little bit. See how that'll do. Hopefully it was the right thing to do, but probably not. So, well, he's going to recharge that. I guess that's pretty much all you can do other than put it back on the snowmobile, which we don't have that to do. So we're going to call that good enough.